husband couldn't forgive my videotaped youthful mistake from 12 years ago. I never imagined that a naive decision I made when I was barely a responsible adult would come back and ruin my life. I urgently need advice on what to do because I have run out of options. My husband, Thomas, M38, is a very traditional and old-school man. He has strong beliefs on decency and modesty. I, F32, never thought a day would come when I would hate his mindset so much. I met my husband 8 years ago on the 13th of March, 2015 in Santa Monica, Los Angeles. I remember the exact day because it was my sister's birthday. I grew up in a middle-class family with 2 brothers and a sister. My parents pretty much calculated everything down to the last cent. We were always on a budget, so birthday parties were never a fun experience for us. This particular day was very different. My sister, Jane, had turned 20 and it was only right for us to celebrate her. She was already a college student by then, so she had made some new friends. She asked me and my brothers to get ready so we could go to a party. I had moved out of the house by then and was already in my final year of college. It was not Jane's birthday party, but she told us she would dance like it was. It was her friend's house party, and she asked Jane to invite as many people as she could. The party was full of drunk teenagers locking lips and swaying their hips to the music. I was not surprised because that is what I expected a college freshman's house party to be like. We were lucky enough to get food and drinks because there had been more than enough provided. That was a big deal for us because we did not have to worry about what our bank balance would look like after the party. As expected at a freshman's party, things escalated and everything became chaotic. The music was extremely loud and the drunk teenagers were either arguing or making out. It already stank of sweat and puke and I was ready to leave with my siblings. Before we even made it to the door, someone turned off the music. That caused a lot of commotion and everyone wanted to know who dared stop the music. It was definitely not the DJ because he was just as surprised. I remember not being able to see the face of the person who grabbed the mic and ordered everyone to leave. The lights were neon, so it was difficult to see properly. I was so curious that I walked towards the figure to see who it was. That was how I met Thomas. He stood there in his sweatpants and black hoodie holding the mic and cursing everyone out. He looked tired and sleepy. I stared at him for a very long time because I found his actions funny. Who in their right mind comes to a party wearing a hoodie and sweatpants? To make things worse, he had been wearing flip-flops. He looked almost comical, but what drew me to him was how confident he looked. I found him weird, but he stood like he found all of us weird. I remember how he caught me staring at him, raised his brows for a while before resuming his shouting marathon to get everyone out. I did not bother staying back anymore and followed my siblings out. That night, I later discovered that Thomas was Jane's friend's brother. He went out to jog for a while only to come home to a party. Jane's friend explained that her brother was quite strict and that he never allowed her to attend parties. I found Thomas weird and cool at the same time, but I never thought I'd see him again. To my surprise, my parents were friendly with him. He owned a grocery store where my parents usually bought groceries from. He owned more than one and was quite successful. I decided to visit his store one day because I was genuinely fascinated by his old-school ways. I remember telling him I was also at the party and that I was a big fan of his. Luckily, he found my joke funny and that was how our friendship began. We were friends for a few months and then I graduated from college. He offered me a job at his store and I took the job in a heartbeat. We saw each other every single day and with time, we would flirt once in a while. 2 years later, we started dating officially and it was great. I liked him a lot and I admired his hard work and friendliness. During our years of dating, Thomas never kissed me in public or even attempted to flirt with me. He believed that private things should be kept private. I didn't really like that idea at first because I thought it was a little unfair, but as time went on, I discovered that Thomas was just really a man who liked his privacy. 1 year later, he proposed to me and of course, I accepted. Thomas was caring and extremely attentive to me. I did not agree with some of his ideologies, but I really loved him and was ready to make our marriage work. He already had more than a dozen stores and they were all doing well. He even gave me one and I started managing it for him. I was now earning enough to support my family and celebrate my birthday how I wanted. Life with Thomas was great as time went on. I began to understand my husband better and learned to tolerate some of his old school ways. 2 years after our marriage, I gave birth to my baby boy, Jaden. Thomas and I were extremely overjoyed and thankful for our baby's birth. Jaden became a breath of fresh air in our marriage and I became obsessed with my little boy. Everything was supposed to be perfect and I felt that it was, but something threatened to take that joy away. 2 months ago, on the 20th of February, I got a text from an unknown number. The sender asked me to take a bus to the park nearest to my house. I found the text quite strange, so I did not bother to reply or do as I was told. I brushed it off and concluded that it must be one of those jobless people online who just wanted to waste people's time. Only if I knew how wrong I was. Exactly 1 week later, that same number texted me again with the same message: take a bus to the park nearest to your house. I was surprised to see the message again, but I did not do anything about it. I just imagined that the sender would eventually get tired and leave me alone. But no, the sender kept texting. Another week later, I received the same text from the same sender, but this time, a threat was attached to it: ignore me all you want, but I will not be going away soon. It's either you come to me or I come to you. Trust me, you do not want me to find you. Those were the exact words I found in that text. I still have the messages on my phone. When I saw that text, I was scared. The funny part was that I did not know what I was scared of. It could have been a child playing a prank, but I was still scared. I contemplated showing the text to my husband, but I changed my mind. If it was really a prank, I didn't want to waste Thomas's time on something so trivial. He was a very busy man and he usually came home tired. After another week of getting the same text, I decided to go to the park and see who the sender was. Thankfully, Thomas was not home the day I left. A part of me was worried because I did not know what to expect, so I wrote a note and dropped it on my nightstand. The note was meant for my husband. If I did not make it back alive, I was that scared. I wanted him to know where I went. That day, when I got off the bus, I met the shock of my life. The guy that was sitting on the bench was someone I never wanted to see in my life. It felt like a dream, and thinking about it now, it still feels like a dream. David, my ex-boyfriend, was the one who sat on the bench waiting for me. Immediately I spotted him. I wanted to run as fast as my legs could carry me, but I could not move. I was shocked to see him. When David lifted his head from his phone and spotted me, a dark smile appeared on his lips. I still remember how he leaned back on the bench and crossed his legs like he had won a lottery. I asked him why he had called me there, and he just shrugged his shoulders and told me he knew I'd come. I turned around to leave, but he grabbed my elbow and stopped me from walking any further. He told me he had something important to say to me and that I needed to hear what it was. I knew that I should not have waited, but I was curious. If he had gone through the trouble and dedicated a month to sending me messages, maybe he truly had something important to say. David only came to shatter my life and ruin the home I worked hard to build. He gave me his phone and asked me to watch a video. My video. Our video. It was a sex tape. Yes, you read that right. It was my sex tape. It was a video of me and David having sex at his house. We made that video when we dated many years ago. I was just 20 years old back then and I thought I had met my husband. I was naive like all other young girls who thought they would marry their first boyfriends. I never thought that video still existed until then. Before David showed me the video, my mind never crossed it. It was such a long time ago that I forgot all about it. David and I were childhood friends who attended the same high school. We did not date until I was 18. He was the first guy I ever got intimate with. All my firsts were with David. I believed that I was honestly in love with him. I did everything he wanted me to do. He was my first boyfriend, so I wanted to please him. It did not help that David would also share his lunch with me once in a while. That was a big deal because it saved my lunch money. He would also get me little gifts once in a while. As a girl who grew up cherishing her last cent, I believed that David was all I needed in life. One day, David asked me to do a video with him. I initially thought it was just a normal video, but when I got to his house, he told me it was a sex video. His parents were not home and he was an only child, so we practically had the house to ourselves that day. It was almost like he planned it all. At first, I was against it because I didn't really like the idea of doing anything intimate in front of a camera, but David assured me that there was no difference. He told me to imagine the both of us alone without the camera. To be honest, I did not think it was a big deal back then. He was my boyfriend and I loved him. I agreed to make the video with him because a part of me was excited. Yes, I was excited at the concept of shooting an intimate video with David. We made the video that day and then we watched it together. I told David to delete the video that very moment because we already watched it and saw what it was like. He promised he would after he watched it one more time. I decided to wait and watch it with him before he deleted it, but then he got defensive and accused me of not trusting him. That made me change my mind because I did not want to upset him. I went back home and texted him later that day asking if he deleted it. He told me he did, and so I moved on and forgot all about it. Barely 2 months after we made the video, I caught David cheating on me, and so I broke up with him. I was really broken and hurt from the breakup. I could not believe that a guy that claimed he loved me so much could do that to me. It took me months to get over him and I promised myself never to see him again. Thankfully, his parents got divorced, they raised a heartbreaker. And he moved to another country with his mother. I forgot all about David months later and I moved on with my life. So, imagine my surprise when I met him at the park that day. Not only that, the fool had the audacity to show me our sex tape. A video he promised me he deleted was still on his phone. I practically cursed the life out of him and asked him to delete the video, but he refused. He threatened to show my husband the video if I didn't do as he said. Apparently, David's mother abandoned him when she could not afford the life of a single mother. David then went into the streets and joined a gang for survival. He got into trouble with a drug dealer and he needed to pay the sum of $10,000. David ran back to Los Angeles to hide, and when he heard I was now married to Thomas, he decided to blackmail me. I could not believe I dated a fool like him in my life. He wanted to use me as bait for a mistake he made? Where would I get $10,000 from? How could I take that kind of money without Thomas knowing? Even if I could, why would I give it to David? Those were the questions I asked myself all through the bus ride back home. I could barely sleep that night and I was extremely scared. A sex tape coming out would ruin my life. I had a child to be a role model to. I had a husband that despised kissing in public. How would he react to a video of his wife having sex with another man? Those were the questions I kept asking myself as I thought about what to do. I told David to give me a week so I could arrange the money. 5 days later, I was able to get the money. I told my sister about it and she was ready to go see David with me. When I got to the park with my sister, I was shocked to see my husband standing there with David. It felt like my whole world had shattered. When I ran there to demand answers, the look of disgust I saw on my husband's face told me everything I needed to know. David betrayed me and showed my husband the video when I promised to bring the money. My husband stormed out of the park without even sparing me a glance. My sister practically kicked David in between his legs and asked him why he told Thomas the truth when I already brought the money along. David said my husband showed up unannounced and met him there. Apparently, Thomas found the letter I left in the nightstand 5 days ago that day and decided to go see what made me so terrified. I forgot to throw the letter away the day I saw David. My husband found it when I went to Jane's place to ask her to accompany me to David. I was not home then, so he got worried and went to the park. David then decided to get double the money by showing my husband the video. I cursed David out and threw my bag at him. Of course, I did not give him the money. He ruined my life because of his greed. I cried my eyes out and laid helplessly on the floor. My sister was the one who took me back home and tried to help me speak to Thomas. Thomas ignored us and left the house angrily. It's been 3 weeks and he only comes to see our son and change his clothes. I've been miserable and depressed. I miss my husband and what our marriage used to be. I can't let a mistake I made 12 years ago ruin my whole life. Please, I need advice on what to do. I'm desperate and helpless. Update. Hi, it's been 2 months since I shared my story. Thank you to everyone who told me to be strong and assured me that I did nothing wrong and it was not my fault. Many of you said it's been 12 years and it happened way before I met my husband. Thank you to the people who told me how foolish I was for making a sex tape when I was that young. I was really foolish. Let me tell you all what happened in the past 2 months. Even after apologizing to my husband several times, he did not change his mind. He told me he could not stomach what he had seen and that he only married me because he thought I had morals. Yes, he said that. At first, I would show up at the shop and try to apologize all over again, but as time went on, I realized I had to let him go. I did not cheat on him. I just made a naive mistake. It was my past, a past I was not proud of, but I still don't understand how my husband could not let it go. I realized how different we were and I knew that if he was the one in my position, I would not have a problem with it. One of my brothers was able to get his lawyer friend to sue David and get him to delete the video. I moved in with my sister and then I filed for divorce from my husband. Our divorce is still ongoing and we will have joint custody of our son. My family has been my rock during these hard times and I have survived thanks to them. My son is my focus now and I am dedicated to being a great mother. Though it was a tough experience, I'm glad it happened. Maybe I did not have the perfect marriage after all. I want to be with a man who isn't disgusted with showing his affection for me in public. I deserve better. Thank you to everyone who took time to encourage me, advise me, and judge me. It was all worth it for me. Life was fun and interesting, until it wasn't. People of Reddit, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Is there anyone who has experienced what I'm about to narrate here? How did you get through it? Did you ever think of taking revenge? I am 29, used to think I had the best luck amongst the people I knew. I was born into a middle-class family, but my parents were rich enough to pay for my schooling, right down to university, so I don't have any student debt. 2 years after school, I met and fell in love with the most perfect lady ever, and then I married her not so long after. I got a job quite early, since I had worked at a big company, name withheld for personal reasons, during my internship days, and they had offered me a job immediately after I left school. So I didn't even get to spend a day unemployed after school. It was at this company I met my wife, Danielle, 32, she was a customer of the company and she came in regularly. Slowly but surely we started to get comfortable with each other. She came over during my lunch break sometimes. We were so close then that my manager made me sole manager of the project that tied my company and hers, that way we never lose them as a client, he said. She mentioned a few things she liked for her ideal man to have, things I tried to model because I was already smote by her. She said she loved a strong man, in good shape and knew how to use his fist when necessary. I was a slim young man so I started to hit the gym. I also got into kickboxing, not because she said so, but because I found it to be a good outlet for controlled violence. Where 2 consenting adults beat themselves to shit until one taps out. Also, I started to slowly let her know that I didn't just want to be a friend of hers, but that I wanted more. I started to flirt, tried to be charming and chivalrous, and was pretty telling of my intentions. At first she was put off by the age difference, as I was 2 years younger than she was. With time though, she started to also take a liking to me, which was good.
Hey everyone. Unfortunately, basically everyone who is watching these videos isn't subscribed. It would mean the world to me to quickly get out of the full screen video for 3 seconds and press that subscribe button. It's free, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Sorry for bothering and thank you so much if you subscribed.
It didn't take long before we were dating and not even longer after that, we were engaged. Might have been rushed on my part to be honest, she even said so one day, but hey, I knew I wanted her in my life. Not more than 2 years after dating, we became misses. When I turned 25, I had an idea for a business and I had started to set it in motion. She supported my every move and even when it cost money to support she supported me with the money I needed. I thought I had a gem of a woman. Life really comes at you fast. I made huge profits from the business I started, big enough for me to think of having kids with her and also big enough for me to quit my job. After a few more ups and downs, I decided to seek outside help. Some sort of outside investment or a big name to help me push my brand further. So aged 27, I had the opportunity to be on Sharks. For those who don't know what Sharks is, it's this huge-ass reality TV show here in the US, where you get to pitch your ideas and business to the hosts, Sharks, who then decide whether or not your ideas, business plan or product is worth their investment or money. I didn't go in expecting a bid, but still I offered $500,000 for 10% shares in the company. I thought if I lowballed myself I'd get an offer from at least one of them. Even if 3 of them decided to buy in, I and my Danielle would still have 70%, I thought to myself as I prepared my pitch. Things went smoothly on that day. I managed to get them into a bidding war and I ended up with a take it or leave it offer of $11 for the company in entirety. Of course I accepted the offer. It was double the offer I gave them and even $4 million more than the actual value of the company. When I got home I opened the most expensive champagne I had and we celebrated such a big dub. That night, my wife and I were very passionate. I don't know if it was the happiness that came from selling the company or from the drinks, it might have even been a result of both of them. That was the day our son, who's now 13 months old, was conceived. The next day, I went to the office with my lawyer, where I met Mark Cuban, the shark who made the offer, and his lawyer were already waiting for my arrival. In a few hours, every single detail needed to run the company was explained to his lawyers. I also added that he was free to do anything with the company but that I would love it if he kept the workers I had. Those guys really helped me and I didn't want them to be out on the streets whilst I smiled all the way to the Bahamas. As that was the last day in charge, I gave all my workers a raise. I didn't need a reason to, and the joy in their eyes and the continuous thanks made me smile. It was bad enough that I was leaving, so I decided to leave them with a goodbye gift. The day ended with me signing all the necessary documents for change of ownership and all. I was paid an additional $1 million to sign a non-compete, which meant I wouldn't try to create another such company and take all their clients. I left happily, my life went according to plan. I worked hard and made enough money to retire, 3 years earlier than I even thought. Now I could spend the rest of my time doing things I was passionate about. I had picked an interest in football, I called it soccer then, but now I have achieved enlightenment. So I now had time to watch football matches. I also got more active in the gym and in kickboxing. I trained every day, from 9 to 4, I also sparred with some people who were willing. The bruises and scars from those sparring made me love fighting more with each passing day, so much so that I decided I was going to do kickboxing, even though locally. I got so good at fighting that I literally became the champion of the city. The biggest kickboxer in our city. In just 5 months I became so good that people started to fear getting in the ring with me. I had a respectable record of 13 wins, 1 draw and 3 losses with 7 TKOs a part of my record. Some agencies tried to reach out to me to join them and to go pro, but I opted against doing so, because I retired from work. I didn't want to go back to any form of work again, also I had a kid on the way. Even though I opted against doing the kickboxing thing for a job, I still kept up appearances and further increased my record. I started doing a little bit of interstate games also. I had taken 2 games before my wife gave birth and I stopped fighting altogether. Also, I sparred with my coach from time to time. My coach was a middle-aged man who used to be a pro boxer. He wasn't a good boxer and had more losses than he had wins. Sometimes I even wondered why I let him coach me. He was absolutely ripped and shredded and was about 3 inches taller than me. My wife put to bed on the 25th of December, 2021. Yep, you bet your ass I named him Jesus. I had become something of a public figure in the city, a kickboxing sensation they called me. I was just 27 then, so I guess one wouldn't have been wrong to think that I was an upcoming kickboxer. I drove her to the hospital that Christmas. The roads were free so I sped through, no regards for the law. I hurriedly got her a room and within a minute she was already 7 centimeters dilated, so the birth process started. I sat there, holding her hand as she pushed the child out. It was a boy. A carbon copy of myself. Anyone who knew me would know the kid was mine at first glance. I had a mini-me. My joy knew no bounds. Weeks after childbirth, my wife started to change. I had decided that we were moving to a more quiet environment to raise the child and other subsequent children, but my wife, who initially loved the idea, now hated it. This wasn't the only thing she now hated. She hated her child, she hated the foods she used to love, she hated me, and sometimes, I think she hated herself also. I heard it was something that came with childbirth, child hating. Even though I thought the hating was too much and also unwarranted. She didn't want to be around the child, nor did she want to be around me. I tried to help her get through it, but nothing I did seemed to be helpful, nor even appreciated. The baby started having formula 2 weeks after being born because the mother didn't want to breastfeed him. Then one day, I booked a trip to Dubai as a surprise getaway for her. I showed her the tickets, and for the first time in 2 months she was happy. She jumped on me, probably the first time she had touched me since she gave birth. The trip made her so happy. She breastfed the child that night, and she did for the days leading to the trip. She also had milk prepared for the child, for when we were away. Well, we went out and I had her mom come over to take care of our child. Honestly, we really had fun in Dubai. I used that opportunity to get a place in the environment I had wanted, a mini mansion which had about 10 rooms, a huge garage that would fit almost 12 cars, and a big pool. Was warned against having a pool because of the child. I wanted my wife to be happy, so I made sure it had everything she wanted. I also got a house beside the mansion, a house which I pulled down to build myself a barn, or a farm. We ended up using it to start a poultry. Everything didn't cost much, about $1.7 million. Yeah, I know that's still a ton of money. We spent a week on our trip. We visited places, Burj Khalifa, went on a Burj Al Arab boat tour, amongst other things. The smile on her face every day was something I loved so much. The nights were also a marvel. Sex was brazy. When I say brazy, I mean absolutely nasty. I learned a lot of new things in the bedroom during that week in Dubai. When we returned from the trip, I drove her to our new house. She absolutely loved it. It was in the countryside, a very quiet environment, and a place where our child can grow up amongst other kids and actually enjoy his childhood. She thanked me for bearing with her in the months when she behaved absolutely horribly. She promised to try not to return to such habits. Well, about my kickboxing career, I and my coach opened a gym in the area, closer to the city though, cause I knew it would be hard to get people in the countryside to join a gym, especially since a lot of them already did heavy-duty jobs. I also trained kids and young adults who were willing to learn and paid how to kickbox themselves. The gym became a real hit in the area. Though not many men were at the gym, we had a ton of middle-aged women visit regularly. Sometimes, when you walked in the gym, you'd think it was a female-exclusive space. The husbands of the women were happy that we were able to get their wives to care about their shape. They would regularly come in to thank Coach and I, and sometimes, they also left tips. It wasn't long before I noticed the real reason why the gym had a lot of women around. My coach was French, and his French accent was really strong. Add that to the fact that this man was a 6'3" mountain of a man, who was probably the fittest person in the countryside, myself included. You have yourself a build that women adored and a voice that made them wet. He, on the other hand, found a way to turn his admirers to clients. I didn't care much about that. My initial doubts were cleared and the gym was hugely profitable. So I did my bi-weekly training with the 12 people who signed up and then sparred periodically with the coach. The spars had a lot of the women watching. Soon we started to host fights and charge the women and other people for viewership. Well, now it had been 6 months since we moved countryside and Danielle had now reverted to her hating ways. She at least breastfed the child for 6 months, which was the bare minimum, before she went back to not wanting to see nor touch the baby. This really made me furious because I had to hire a nanny when I had my wife. We fought regularly about this, sometimes way into the night. Due to the fights we had, I started to sleep in one of the many rooms in the house. At some point I too started to not love her a lot, waking up every day and seeing your child in the arms of another woman while your wife did nothing but sunbathing by the pool, reading her magazines. That attitude disgusted me, and I hope within me that she'd change before we lose the love we had for each other. Slowly but surely, she started leaving the house. Which was good, I guess. This was until I found out where she always went when I was home. Well, if you were thinking into my gym, you're right on money. She would stop by my gym daily, when I wasn't around, and whenever I came around when she was in the gym, she'd be acting all different. She'd be acting the way she does when I caught her doing something she shouldn't be doing. At first I thought she'd started smoking again, as she had stopped when she got pregnant with baby Jesus. I asked her if she had started smoking, but she denied it. She said she hadn't had a puff of smoke since we started trying for a baby, which was even months before she took in. She got annoyed at the fact that I asked, as they all do. I tried to explain that I simply asked because she stopped breastfeeding and started going out more, so I thought she was smoking and stopped breastfeeding so that she wouldn't hurt the baby. Guess what she said? If I were smoking again, I'd breastfeed him more than before. Maybe if he had brain damage and D*****, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
What the actual How on earth is this woman a mother? I couldn't stomach what she said, so I left for the poultry farm. My life liked to sunbathe to get away from her responsibilities. I liked to feed the chickens. While I was in the poultry, I saw her leave again. This time a thought entered my cranium: follow her. I thought since she said she wasn't smoking again, what could she possibly be doing? Like a reflex action, I stepped in the car and tailed her, and she drove to the gym. The gym? Why is she heading for the gym? We don't open on Sundays. I thought to myself. I sat in my car, just a bit far from the gym, so I could see what's going on and not be noticed. I saw my coach walk out of the gym. I thought she said she doesn't smoke. What could she be doing with coach who smokes in the gym on Sundays? What I saw next dropped my jaw. Coach gave Danielle a flower and then the two kissed, passionately. Hell. Then it started coming back to me. I remembered some of the women who had a crush on him used to come up to me and joke about how the coach now has a girlfriend, so they might stop coming to the gym. I always used to laugh it off, cause I knew they wouldn't stop coming, and also I knew nothing about a new girlfriend. The women didn't know my wife, none of them had ever seen her, so they didn't know that my business partner and coach had been my wife. Well, I was stuck in my chair for a while. Surely this was the last straw. I went back home. I started to keep tabs on her activity, both their activities. I tried to see if I could get any of them to come clean about the affair they were having, but none of them did. Obviously, the next step was to plan my way out of this. I went to the city to meet with my lawyers. He now worked with Mark Cuban because aside from myself and the workers, he was the only other person who really understood the operations. We had a long conversation, catching up. He told me how much the company was worth now, over $100 million. I was happy that my idea really made that much of an impact. We got down to the actual reason why I came to see him. I discussed my plan right out of the marriage. He told me the whole thing was going to be shitty because infidelity wasn't seen as a reason for separation under the laws in which we got married. He also said that I might have to part with half the money I have right now because she stopped working because of me, and she also helped fund my startup before I sold it. When I got home, I decided I was going to find a loophole. It took some time, but I found one. I opened a trust fund for baby Jesus and put all but $1.5 million in it. I also discussed with Coach, and we discussed a favorable deal where he bought out my share of the gym. The money I got from the sale of the gym I put into my mother's account. That was just last week, but now I don't know what to do. Which is honestly why I am here. I need help, advice, criticism, everything and anything I could get. Update. Well, it's been a year. I'm still married to the bitch. We haven't been intimate in a year, which is funny and also good because I don't know what has been in there and I don't want to mix DNAs with nonsense. I planned to get something though. I needed to do something of some sorts, so I planned a revenge. To get to deal with things myself. During our spars, I started letting Coach win more than he normally would. He would get cocky after his wins, and I would tell him that I was just rusty. In my conversations with him, I started to put an idea in his head. A no-holds-barred match. At this point, I had strategically lost 17 spars in a row against him. Slowly but surely, he bought into the idea. He started to train for the match, and we started to advertise it. Most of the women who liked him had got tickets to distribute to friends. I made sure it was going to be big. The only thing I didn't do was televise it, though I had the means to. When the day of the match drew closer, my wife started talking to me more about it. She'd tell me to go easy on him, that he was 10 years older than me, so he would be weaker. She knew how strong I was, and I think she was worried I'd break the face she sat on regularly. On the other hand, I started to do little things to annoy the coach. I would flirt with some of the women in the gym, especially the ones he told me he liked the most. I would break things, just to get under his skin. I no longer shared the losses, so I didn't have to pay for broken stuff. He started to complain soon. Yep, this fool was walking straight into my trap. He started to get a little more aggressive in our spars, which made me know things were going as planned. I kept up the petty antics. One day, I accidentally drove into the gym. That was $5,000 worth of damage right there, and due to the gym clause I signed when I switched from owner to customer, the gym clause which stated that damage done by paying customers were covered by the establishment, I didn't have to pay for shit. He came out absolutely furious. He was shouting at the top of his voice. I finally got him where I wanted. I shouted, mostly telling him to shut up, that it was an accident and it could happen to anyone. I went a step further and added, accidents like this one and your doping incident that made you retire as a worthless, waste of space boxer happens. He wailed. I hit him where he hurt the most. Don't worry, come next month, I'll show you who really is the waste of space. He continued wailing and screaming at me as I sat in front of the bar. Some of the women came to my aid, asking me if I was hurt and all that. I told coach I wasn't sparring anymore, that if he wanted to prove he wasn't as useless as his father thought, he should beat me in front of the crowd. Did I take it too far? Probably. Do I care? No. He crossed the line in our relationship when he decided my wife was a sex toy to be used. Said wife came back home later that day, shouting and screaming at me for crashing into the shop. She was in a fit of rage, so wild that she accidentally slipped the already known fact that she was sleeping with him. That was when it hit her. All I did was just a plan to rile him up so that I could get him into a ring which he probably would have to be stretched out of. She started pleading with me to go easy on him, to forgive her, to yada, yada, yada. Pleas that fell on deaf ears. I didn't see the coach again until the D-Day. Day of his reckoning. I was able to get myself up to his weight class, and though he was still 20 pounds heavier, I was certain I would destroy this bastard. The match started, and in less than 20 minutes the match ended. He had started coming at me with all the rage he had. I soaked in all his attacks cause for someone who was a boxer, he hit like a girl. At the start of the second round, I unleashed my evil intent. He had gone into the second round leading on points, but after the first elbow shot hit him at the back of the head, things changed and the 5,000 people in the audience saw that things changed. I pound this mother like a Nigerian woman would pound yam for their savory pounded yam and a goosey soup delicacy. Halfway into the second round he couldn't even stand well. He was staggering around the place, he fell down twice and he wanted to stay down, but I shouted at him, your father would be rolling in his grave right now, how can such a great boxer give birth to such a failure? 39 matches in your career and you had no KOs, not even one. You're a disgrace to combat sports. He stood up and I pounded him more, again and again and again. I hit him in the jaw with my knee. That was the last time he stood up. He fell face first, but I still followed him down, landing an elbow to the spine. I put him in a submission lock and he tapped immediately. I had one. I knelt beside him and whispered in his ear, I know you are my wife, I've known for a year now. That was why I suggested you step in the ring with me. You stupid fella, you saw my fights, you saw how people trembled when I walked in the ring and you thought you could beat me because I stopped fighting for 2.5 years, I added. I stood up and looked in the direction of my wife. She was horrified. The ambulance came and Jim was stretchered out. She made to leave, but my lawyer held her, giving her the papers he had in his hands. I had served her and I was ready to give her whatever she wanted. She just had to go. The reason why I did what I did to the coach was because he had known me for close to 9 years, we were very good friends, and even started a gym together, yet he still decided to lay with my wife. Out of close to 30 women who had a crush on him, he chose my woman. I took a microphone and announced my return to kickboxing to the audience, and even better, I announced that I now consider doing it for a living. That's where we are right now, guys. I've started the journey towards single life. Update 2. Well guys, it has been 3 years since the epic grudge match versus French fries, as you guys call him in the comments. I am now divorced 2 years, although I had to forfeit the mansion and 40% of all my other assets, which meant she got 1% shares of Amazon, 0.4% shares in Tesla, and also $500,000 cash. Now those shares are worth millions, and the divorce has literally made her the richest woman in our town, but hey, that's life for you, at least I got my kid. Full custody. I also went back into kickboxing, and now I have an even better record of 32 wins, 1 draw, and 3 losses. I hadn't lost a match since I got back 3 years ago. All in all, I am enjoying myself. I'm still very rich, wealthy in capitals. Also now, I have finally found peace. I thank you all for reading this and for bearing with me as I lived this story for you. I hope that whoever sees this and is hurting from a similar situation finds solace in the comments. I will be moving on to other things like raising my son, taking cooking classes, and so on and so forth. Thanks.
Okay.
Medium dark skin tone emoji modifier.